Welcome to the Chemistry, Biology and Math Revision Hub. Today we're doing the Pearson Edexcel International A-Level Biology, Unit 4 for June 2022. This is the Part 2 video. I will put the link to the Part 1 video below the description box. Let's begin with question 5. It says, the table shows the energy content in 3 trophic levels of a food chain from an African plain. So in trophic level 3, we see there is a lion and that is the energy present. In trophic level 2, there is a Garanox and that is the energy present. And in trophic level 1, we have the tree and that is the energy present in there. So they ask, which are the units for the energy content of these organisms? Energy content here is going to be measured in amount of energy per area per time. The energy should be kilojoules, the area should be meter squared, and the time should be year. So this is kilojoules per meter squared per year, and therefore the answer is a C. Moving on, they say the energy content of the tree is the net primary productivity, or they call NPP. What is the relationship between NPP, gross primary productivity, GPP, and respiration, R? Here we know that NPP should equal to GPP minus R. So the answer here should be a B. Then they say, calculate the ratio of the energy content shown in these trophic levels. So trophic level 1 to trophic level 2 to trophic level 3. I got from the table, this was the information present there. And dividing each by 920, this gives me a 1. That gives me a 9.59. And that gives me a 98.3. However, the ratio should be in whole numbers. So I rounded this off to get 98. That off to get 10. And that off to get 1. So the answer is 98 to 10 to 1. The next here they ask, explain why there is no fourth trophic level in this food chain. If there would be a fourth trophic level, it means the energy in the third trophic level should be able to sustain life in the fourth trophic level, or the energy passed on from the third to the fourth should be able to sustain the fourth trophic level. So here I say, absence of the fourth trophic level is because there is not enough energy in the third trophic level to ensure sustainability of life in the fourth trophic level. That is the only reason why there is no fourth trophic level. So let's continue. Here they say, describe the role of microorganisms in recycling carbon present in this food chain. Microorganisms carry out breakdown or digestion of organic matter. So they break down organic matter using enzymes, or we would say hydrolytic enzymes. And these processes release carbon dioxide from respiration. The released carbon dioxide is going to be returned back to the atmosphere, where it's going to be taken up by the plants through the process of photosynthesis in a fixation of CO2 in order to make new organic matter within the plants. So let us continue. Here they say, the photographs show Garanox and a Springbok to the same magnification. So we can see the Garanox are actually bigger. If this is the same magnification, these are bigger in comparison to that. And we can see the horns here are smaller while these horns are longer. We can see even their physical appearance, the color. You can see this white material is a little lower in the belly while this is around the surface. So they say, the table gives some information about Garanox and Springbok. So here we can see the diet. Information, these feed on leaves, a range of different trees, often spiny trees up 2 meters from the ground. So this is really high. These are short grass and bushes. And then we see the water requirement. These ones here, the water content is made by the food they eat, while these ones have to drink water. The height, we can see these are taller in comparison to those. The mass, of course, there is some of the mass varies depending on this and that. So between the females and the males, we can see there is different in mass. Color of the fur, there is light brown with white underbelly. Here they have light to mid brown with large areas of white. So that's also significant. And then the length of horns, we can see these horns here a little bit shorter in comparison to those horns. So let's move on to the next part. Here they say, Garanox and Springbok evolved from a common ancestor. Deduce how the Garanox evolved to occupy a different niche from a Springbok, and use the information in the table and the photographs to support your answer. So I said, they both evolved by natural selection. If they became different species, natural selection must have occurred. And we can see that the Garanox have longer limbs and necks. They feed high up in the trees and their white areas are more under their bellies. So we can see that is by natural selection. So I say through natural selection, the organisms that were more adapted and they survived and reproduced and they then passed on their alleles to their offsprings. Let me try to check this out. They were more adapted, survived, I'll do that, and reproduced. So they then passed on their alleles to their offsprings. And then we go on to say that random mutation occurred in their ancestors. Of course, to bring about this variation, random mutations could have occurred, leading to variation in lengths of the neck as well as in the type of horns. So after this variation, it means the organisms with the longer necks could reach high up in the trees and could feed on those, maybe the leaves high up in the tree in comparison to those that had shorter necks. So the height of food in this case was selection pressure. And selection pressure creates a situation whereby those that are more adapted are going to survive, reproduce, while those that are not well adapted are going to die out or they'll be outcompeted. So here I say those with smaller horns did not get stuck in the branches. On this statement, I want to take you back a little. If you look at these organisms, these ones here have longer horns in comparison to these. Because these feed in among the branches, if their horns are longer, there is a chance that they will get stuck in the branches and the animal will not be able to move away from that area. So having shorter horns is advantageous to them. However, they shouldn't get rid of horns completely because they need horns to fight for the females during courtship. So here I went on to say, Garanox retain their horns to fight for females or for fights for females. And the occupation of different natures led to less gene flow between them, leading to changes in allele frequency. This one here means if these organisms were occupying different niches, meaning feeding on different different ways of feeding, there is a chance that they were feeding in different areas, and that separation could have led to less mating or less reproduction between them. So that led to a decrease in gene flow between the two different organisms that were there initially, and that caused less connection or less the allele frequency was greatly reduced or changed between them, and therefore there was reproductive isolation that was created, and over periods of time there were generation of new species, so they could no longer mate and create offsprings that could be able to have other children or to have offsprings of their own. So they were kind of like sterile offsprings that could be produced if they were able to be able to mate with them. So also here I went on and say that some of these traits, I'm talking about the traits, the length of the neck as well as the type of the horns, are polygenic traits, meaning even among the organisms that have the shorter horns, the length of the horn is not going to be the same because there is going to be variation even among those with short or variation among those that have longer horns. So there is variation due to some of these polygenic traits. The organisms show continuous variation for that specific or for those traits. Also, sympatric speciation occurred as organisms had no physical barrier separating them. So the generation of these species was through sympatric speciation because there was no physical barrier separating the two organisms, yet overall or after time, they were able to evolve into new species. So it was circumstantial or situation that occurred, but there was no geographical barrier separating the two. This brings us to the end of question 5. Let's continue to question 6. Question 6, the diagram shows a human immunodeficiency virus, HIV. They ask which structure is RNA. RNA is this structure here. That one here is single-stranded, as you can see. We can see that this one here could be an enzyme. This is going to be the capsid here. We can see outside there, the structure S. And then these are glycoproteins. So I named everything here, and the answer here should be a D. Then the next they say, how many of the following structures contain protein? Let's go back to structure Q. I say this could be an enzyme, so this contains proteins. R is a glycoprotein. Of course, it contains protein. And structure S is a protein capsid. It also contains a protein, so all of them contain proteins. That's why the answer here should be a D. All 3 contain proteins. Moving on. Here they say which virus has the structure P and contains RNA. Structure P is an envelope. So if we look at here, we can see Ebola virus. Yeah, Ebola virus contains an envelope and it has RNA. Here they say Ebola virus and tobacco mosaic virus. TMV doesn't have an envelope, so that is out. Also here we see there is TMV. It has no envelope. And here TMV has no envelope. So we know Ebola virus contains an envelope. TMV doesn't. So the answer should be only A, as you can see there. Next, they say the diameter of HIV is 120 nanometers, which is the approximate magnification of this drawing. you have to use a ruler. Let me take you back. You have to use a ruler and find the diameter of this. And then after finding the diameter, you can be able to calculate the magnification. So from my assumption, the diameter was about 6 centimeters, which is about 16 millimeters. Converting millimeters to nanometers is you multiply by 10 power 6, which gives you 60 million nanometers. Now, magnification should be equal to the image size divided by the object size, or whatever, the way it looked exactly. So this is going to be 60 million divided by the 120 they gave us here, which is the actual diameter. And then when I divided, I got 500,000. So the magnification should be times 500,000, and the correct answer here should be a D. Let us continue. Here they say the graph shows the number of HIV infections and the number of deaths from HIV in the world from 1990 to 2007. So here we have the graph given to us like that. Vertical, we see number in millions. Please be very careful about the scale. This is the number in millions, and then the horizontal axis, we can see the years. This is about deaths from HIV that have occurred over years. Here we have the people infected with HIV. These are numbers divided by 10. So be very careful. This one here has been divided by 10. And then here we can see the new infections of HIV. So if they have divided this by 10 and it's still matching up, it means it would be way higher, and the graph wouldn't be able to fit on the paper and be represented accurately. So here they said the data plotted for the number of people infected with HIV has been divided by 10. Explain why these numbers were divided by 10. So I say to ensure that all the data can fit on one graph, the y-axis scale would be so extended out to plot the number of people infected with HIV as real values. Also, then this would result, the rest, so basically if you had plotted like that, the rest of the data would appear to be small in comparison, or it would be squashed. Let's take an example. If you had, this could appear some kind of like that, not representative enough, and the other could be so far away, so that you will not be able to compare these results properly to have an efficient conclusion using the graph itself, because they will not be making sense. It will look as if the number of infections are so many in comparison to the number of the deaths and so on. The y-axis will be so extended, the results would not be well, and somebody was looking at the results, they may have some confusion or a harder time trying to be able to connect or make a comparison between the data that has been plotted. So to avoid that, they divided by 10 so that the graphs can show a clear flow. This could be like a straight line instead of being like a curve if you had drawn this in real values. So that could be misrepresented, and the data will be incorrectly interpreted by somebody who is viewing the graph. So to prevent that, they divided by 10 to ensure that you can see the shape of the graph properly to make a fair comparison. So I hope you get it. Let's move on to the next part. Here they say calculate the mean rate of increase in the number of people infected with HIV from 2005 to 2010. So they say express your answer in standard form to an appropriate number of significant figures. Here from the graph, again, let me take you back. We can see there is a change from about 3.1 to about 3.2. In 2005, the value is about 3.1, and in 2010, it's about 3.2, roughly there. So I say 3.2 minus 3.1, that is the increase, divided by the number of years, which is 5 years. Remember, you're finding mean rate. You have to divide by the number of years. So the mean rate is 0.02. But remember, this was divided by 10 before they plotted it, and the scale on the vertical axis is in millions. So 1 million times 10 gives you 10 power 7, so you have to multiply this number by 10 power 7. I want to take you back to the graph so that you can see it. To plot this data here, they divided the actual data by 10. However, the vertical axis, the number is in millions, so it should be this data here. Instead of times 10 power 6, which is a million, we have to do times 10 power 7 for at least this curve here to be able to get the correct value. So here I multiplied the value got here times 10 power 7 to give me 2 times 10 power 5. Remember, we were supposed to represent our answer in standard form, and that is what you say. So it's 2 times 10 power 5, and that is the number of infections per year. Next, I say explain why the number of people infected with HIV is going up, although the number of new infections and deaths is going down after 2005. I said because of the better medical care, more infected people are surviving despite the increase in infections. So ability, people are being taken care of well. Even if they have the HIV, they are not dying as they used to die years ago. Next, state how the graph can be estimated, can be used to estimate the number of deaths in 2025. Here you will extrapolate the graph to 2025 and be able to find the data. Or you could extend the line of best fit to 2025, and that could be a good approximation of the number of deaths that would occur in that year. Let's move on. Here they say explain why this estimate would be lower if a vaccine for HIV became available in 2023. If a vaccine is available, it means people are going to be vaccinated and artificial immunity is going to occur. Memory cells will be created within their bodies, so the vaccinated people will have protection, and in case they come into contact with the HIV virus, the infection would not be able to get them, or the body will be immune to fight off the infection, and the virus will not be able to survive in their bodies. And then the unvaccinated people, so in this case, if we have fewer people that are infected due to the vaccine fighting off the virus, it means those who are not vaccinated will have a less chance of coming into contact with people who have HIV, and therefore even the unvaccinated people will have a higher chance of catching the HIV. In this, we call this herd immunity. Oh, let me take it back, sorry. Herd immunity will occur because the unvaccinated will be less likely to come into contact with the people who have the HIV, and therefore they will also have a higher chance of catching it. So this brings us to the end of question 6. Let us continue to question 7. Question 7. The photograph shows a Tasmanian devil. We can see this is the organism here. They say Tasmanian devils are found in Tasmania. The population of Tasmanian devils has fallen drastically due to a fatal cancer. This cancer first appeared in the mid-1990s. There are only a few regions in Tasmania left where healthy Tasmanian devils can still be found. The number of Tasmanian devils is estimated to have fallen from 150,000 in the mid-1990s to 25,000 in 2020. They want us to calculate the percentage decrease in the number of Tasmanian devils from the mid-1990s to 2020. Percentage decrease should be decrease divided by the original times 100. So the decrease is the change from 150,000 to 25,000. Divide by 150,000, multiply the answer by 100. I get about 83.333, and I rounded it off to 83.3%, and that is my answer. Some students could even round off to 83%, and that could be okay, but do not leave it so much in the recurring decimal. That could be just try to round off to the nearest specific or significant figures, could be 3 and so on. So moving on. They say Tasmanian devils feed on the dead bodies of animals, or these are carcasses, and scare off other scavengers. Scientists have studied the scavenging of carcasses in 2 regions of Tasmania, one region where all Tasmanian devils were healthy and one region where cancer was common. The length of time Tasmanian devils and 3 other scavenging animals spent feeding on carcasses was investigated. The results are shown in the table. So here we have the results. They say region where all Tasmanian devils were healthy. We can see the proportion of time the scavengers spent feeding on each carcass. We can see the time. And then where Tasmanian devils with cancer were common. So we can see here. We can see in the regions where cancer is common, Tasmanian devils spend a little bit. We can see there is less time feeding in comparison to that. Or the carcasses, actually scavengers spend less time feeding here in comparison to that. And in other regions, we can see for these ones here, that the other organisms, they spend a little bit longer in those cancer areas in comparison to where they are healthy Tasmanian devils. It's either telling us that the Tasmanian devils are where there is no cancer, they are more in number, and therefore they are chasing away. If you go back here, they scare off the scavengers. Maybe here, where there is no cancer, the Tasmanian devils are healthy, and therefore they are capable of chasing away the other scavengers from the carcasses. However, in this region, either the Tasmanian devils are fewer in number, or they are sick and they do not have enough strength to chase away the other scavengers from the carcasses. So the other scavengers can be able to feed longer on the carcasses without being chased away by the Tasmanian devils. I think you can see that information from this graph here. So moving on, from the table, the length of time it took for the carcasses to be completely eaten was also investigated, and the results are shown in the graph. So looking at the graph, you can see the proportion of carcasses remaining over time. Over time, we can see the carcasses are decreasing and decreasing and decreasing in both regions. So let's continue. They say explain the results of these two studies and use the information in the table and the graph to support your answer. So I said, in cancer areas, I began by looking at the table. So from the table in the cancer areas, the Tasmanian devils spent less time feeding on carcasses. And this could be because there were fewer Tasmanian devils in this area, or it could be that most are very sick or too weak to feed. It could be that most of them have died. That is very correct. And then the other species, you saw the ravens, the cats as well as the quolls, all spent more time feeding in these cancer regions. That is because maybe there were fewer Tasmanian devils that could scare them off the carcasses. Continuing, I say this could be due to the less Tasmanian devils to scare them off, so they have less competition. The quolls, ravens, and feral cats, cats' numbers were close, meaning almost similar in both areas, and this shows that there is less competition between them. They could be feeding on different parts of carcasses. This is another assumption. Maybe the different organisms like this, and that, since their numbers were kind of similar, it is possible that maybe these were feeding on a different part of the carcass's body, and this is a different part of the carcass, and that's a different part of the carcass. So there is no competition among them. That is why their numbers are kind of almost evenly distributed among them. So I went on to say from the graph, the carcasses in the cancer regions last longer than in the non-cancer regions. And this could be because the Tasmanian devils are so sick to feed. Probably other scavengers do not eat every carcass part. And the proportion of the carcasses slowly decreases as time passes by due to, it decreased by 0.02% after 25 days. So that is what I saw there. It decreased by that. If I take you to the graph, you can see it's about, after 25 days, it's about this, about that here, 0.02. So let's continue. Here they ask, explain what other biotic factors could have affected the result from the two regions, different regions of Tasmania in the second investigation. So here it could be that other scavengers would feed on the carcasses, meaning scavengers not included in the table. What if they feed on the carcasses? Or if other organisms scare scavengers away? Not only the Tasmanian devils, what if others could scare us? This could be like other predators that were scary to the scavengers. Whenever they came, the scavengers ran away. Also, pathogens that could cause disease among scavengers, that is possible. And if the carcasses were decomposed by decomposers, like microorganisms, before they could be completely eaten by these scavengers we're talking about. So all these things are biotic factors that could be able to cause a change in the results that we have seen. So this brings us to the end of question 7. Let's continue to question 8. Question 8. The eruption of a volcano can devastate the surrounding countryside and cause climate change. The photograph shows the devastation that can result from a volcanic eruption. So here they're going to say, succession occurs in the devastated areas. This is completely destroyed. All the organisms have been destroyed most of the time due to the eruption. However, succession is going to occur over years. So it means it will begin with pioneer species. So pioneer species are the first to colonize these areas. Several stages follow, which may result in a climax community. So they ask, describe 3 characteristics of pioneer species. Pioneer species should be able to survive in extremely harsh environments. These harsh environments could mean maybe there is less mineral ions to survive on. Like, real plants, if they are growing, they need nitrates, they need phosphates. However, in these regions, there could be no nitrates, there could be no phosphates. A pioneer species should be able to survive in less or in mineral deficient areas in order to be able to colonize that area for other species that will come later. They can survive with less water, that is also okay. They grow rapidly and produce a lot of seeds. These seeds that are produced are going to be dispersed in the many various ways. So also these pioneer species have various dispersal methods so that they ensure that their species is going to be continued over generations even among these harsh conditions. So they should have some of these characteristics. Moving on. Here they say explain why succession occurs in stages. Succession occurs in stages because some of the habitats have to be transformed before other organisms can occupy those specific habitats. The example I can say here is, look at soil. the soil has to be improved by adding dead organic matter for higher plants like trees to occupy it. This dead organic matter could be the dead of the pioneer species as well as the organisms that follow that create the organic matter that can form humus that is going to allow for higher plants to be able to survive in that area. Moving on, they say the graph shows the changes in environmental temperature before and after a volcanic eruption. So the vertical axis shows us the change in environmental temperature, and here we can see time in years, and you can see this is when the eruption took place. So they ask, determine the effect of the volcanic eruption on environmental temperature and use the information in the graph to support your answer. So here I said, volcanic eruptions lead to an immediate drop in temperature. We can see it from here. The eruption occurred here, and the temperature immediately went down. We can see there. So it led to an immediate drop in temperature or environmental temperature by about 0.2. You can see that 0.2 degrees Celsius in a period of about 1.26 years. And after that, there is an increase in temperature. After this point, we can see an increase in temperature that could occur. Moving on, they ask, when this volcano erupted, sulfur dioxide and particles of ash were released into the atmosphere. Sulfur dioxide and particles of ash caused less light to pass through the atmosphere. Explain the results of this. So results shown in this graph, after the release of these gases and the particles, they will block of course, they're going to block light from coming into. So it means that short ultraviolet radiation will not be hitting the surface of the earth properly, or it will be hitting in less amount. And as a result, there will be less infrared that is being reflected back from the surface of the earth to the outer space. And therefore, there will be less trapping of heat as this reflected radiation escapes away from the surface. Less of it will be trapped in the atmosphere. And after some time, these particles will decrease. So basically, these 2 points here are talking about why there is going to be a decrease in temperature. And then these other parts talking about why after some time a temperature is going to increase. It is because after some time, these particles will decrease in the atmosphere, and then the shorter UV light will reach the surface of the earth, leading to more infrared radiation being reflected, and as a result, more heat is going to be trapped in the atmosphere, leading to an increase in the temperatures of the earth. So down here they say, the eruption of one volcano resulted in 5 × 10⁻⁷ metric tons of carbon dioxide entering the atmosphere in 1 year. The mass of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere in 1 year by anthropogenic activity is 3.5 × 10⁻10 metric tons. Calculate how many volcanic eruptions would need to occur in 1 year to produce as much carbon dioxide as anthropogenic activity. To create this, if each volcano creates that, it means this divided by that should tell you how many volcanoes will be required. So when I did that division, I got 700. So we will need 700 volcanic eruptions to release the same amount of CO2 into the atmosphere like that released in 1 year. So here we go, and they say, the graph shows the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere in one region of the world from 1958 to 2004. During this period, there were volcanic eruptions in 1993, 1980, 1982, and 1991 in this region. We can see from the graph that here the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere increases over time as the years go by. So they ask, down here they say, discuss the possible effects of volcanic eruptions on climate change and use the information in part B to support your answer. I said from the graph, there is no significant change. You can see it's almost the same. Because if they told us that there is a volcanic eruption in 1963, 1980, 1982, and 1991, we cannot see that the graph is almost the same. There is no significant change we can see there. So I said from the graph, there is no significant change in the carbon dioxide levels after the eruptions. However, from the evidence we know, it is evident that volcanic eruptions release huge amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And there might be, this could contribute to global warming through greenhouse effect. We know these carbon dioxide gases trap heat in the surface, causing global warming. However, we also know that these volcanic eruptions release a lot of sulfur dioxide and ash into the atmosphere, which leads to the lowering of the temperature of the earth. So there could be, these two things could be able to kind of counterbalance each other. The gases, these two gases leading to a decrease in temperature, while CO2 leads to an increase in temperature. So they balance out each other in a way, or they offset each other in a way that overall we do not see a significant change in temperature, because one of them causes an increase while the other causes a decrease. If they happen at the same time, then we will not see a significant change in temperature. So I think you understand that. This brings us to the end of question 8 as well as the end of this paper. Thank you for being with us. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.